Welcome to Diecast Restos for this custom on a Matchbox Volvo 760. This 3-box brick was recreated in 1:62 scale for Matchbox's Rest of World range. That means that North America didn't receive this Volvo. It arrived in 1986, had a colour change in 1988 and promptly disappeared from the mainline after 1989. This untidy specimen will be resto modded to look more akin to a stock 760 GLE from the mid-80s. Here's how this one would have looked when minty fresh, while this is where I'm aiming to end up. I need to match those wheels, so I picked up these Porsche flat dishes from Creative 164. I think I can work with them, don't you? So as I set out to work on dismantling the Volvo, let's talk about the history of the toy. It arrived in the Matchbox Rest of World mainline in 1986, numbered MB62, replacing the Corvette T-roof. The US received the Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud at this number instead. The Volvos were painted silver, had a black base which formed the front and rear bumpers, and had a black plastic interior piece. These were made in Macau. They didn't have any tampograph prints on them, unlike the later dark red versions like mine, which had basic headlights trimmed in. One notable variation on these castings is the possibility of having no 760 GLE badging cast onto the rear. These models ran through 1986 and 1987 and were then recoloured for 1988. The only difference with these models were the colour change to red and the addition of the headlight trim. Everything else remained the same. Production continued through 1989, but the 760 was dropped for 1990. It was replaced by a reissue of the Volvo container truck in the Rest of World line. The casting was revived for 1992 in the Graphic Traffic series. This novelty spin-off featured models with all-white bodies and included special marker pens that allowed the buyer to add on their own decorations. These ran between 1991 and 1994. The Volvo's body and base were painted white for this run, plus its transparency was tinted amber and its interior was moulded in white. The casting mould had one final outing in 1997 and it went out with a bang. It was featured in Matchbox's Ultra collection, meaning it was given some really special attention. Painted in silver, it had lashings of trim detailing ranging from the headlights, grills, belt line, side repeaters, window surrounds, door mirrors, tail lights and registration plates. The interiors were also coloured in grey and blue, while the traditional 8-dot wheels were replaced with Goodyear rubber-clad turbine wheels. My aim is to achieve similar if not more realistic results from this custom, including matching these wheel trims as closely as I can, and as you'll have just seen, using peroxide to reduce the yellowing of the near 40-year-old plastics. But now let's paint strip. Look how much fresher that transparency is after baking in some UV light with its peroxide coating. It still needs a bit more love and attention with a good polishing. Volvo introduced their 700 series in 1982 as their new line of executive cars. It replaced the 200 series, which would continue in production as their mid-sized offering. The 6-cylinder 760 was the first to launch, equipped with a live rear axle, unusual for executive vehicles. This offered greater cabin space as it was mounted in a subframe behind the passenger compartment. The 760 GLE arrived with a 2.8 litre V6, and a 2.4 litre straight-six diesel was immediately available only in high diesel penetration markets. It was met with some criticism though. Famed automotive design legend Gordon Murray wrote in Autocar magazine,
"To me, it's obscene. That goes right against the grain of what everybody else is trying to do. To me, it looks like a European version of a North American car. It produces the same amount of power as a 2600 or 3500. In this day and age, it disgusts me to see something about like that. It's a definite step backwards.
Ouch. For 1983, air conditioning and power windows became standard equipment on the 760. A larger 82-litre fuel tank was also phased in. In 1984, turbocharged and intercooled variants became available, but the year also saw the introduction of the lower spec 740 model. The 740 was intended to be a more stylish, spacious, luxurious and more performance-oriented alternative to the 200 series. The 4 from the 740 name would once have signified a 4-cylinder engine, but by the time of the introduction of the 740, it simply meant less luxurious, as both 4 and 6-cylinder engines were fitted across both ranges. A station wagon for both 740 and 760 ranges premiered at the Toronto and Chicago auto shows in February 1985. An intercooled 2-litre turbo was offered for the 740 range in some markets that year. Traction control became available on the 760 that year also, and anti-lock brakes were standardised. For 1986, Volvo debuted their first coupe in 5 years, the 780. A spiritual successor to the 262C, the 780 was designed by Marc Deschamps and was built in Turin by Bertoni. The bonnet, boot and roof lines were all lower than the standard 700 series cars, and it had a wider C-pillar. There was just a 1cm loss of headroom. In its first 2 years, it was offered with the PRV 2.8-litre V6, while its live rear axle was replaced with independent suspension in 1987. The car weighed 1,500 kilos, around 3,400 pounds, and there had been issues raised with its lack of performance. Volvo introduced a 2.3-litre turbocharged inline-4 engine to address these concerns. This produced 173 horsepower compared to the V6's 148, and was later increased to 185. In 1988, the 740 was offered with Volvo's first multi-valve engine, a 16-valve version of their red block unit. This produced almost as much power as the earlier turbocharged engine. The 760 also received updates in 1988. Changes included an aluminium hood, aerodynamic headlights, and recessed windscreen wipers. Inside, it received a new dashboard, stereo system, and 3-point tilt steering. They now received the same suspension setup as seen in the 780, but the fuel tank shrank by 2 litres due to these modifications. The wagon continued to use the live rear axle. Production of the 760 and 780 wound down in 1990. The 760 was replaced by the 960, while there was no direct successor to the 780. The 1996 C70 would be the next coupe offering from Volvo. Meanwhile, the 740 received a facelift that year, featuring new smaller composite headlamps and 780 style taillights. It received a new dashboard similar to the updated one seen in the 760. Production of the 740 ended in 1992, bringing to a close the Volvo 700 series. In all, 1.4 million 700 series were built during 10 years of production, with 8,500 of these being the 780 coupe. Volvo were known in the 70s and 80s for their genteel colour palette. Many 700 series cars were painted in light silvers, golds, beiges and blues, as well as their customary red to name but a few. I thought that Tamiya's pearl light blue looked remarkably similar to Volvo's Ljusblå Metallic, Swedish for light blue. On this casting, I think that it suits to a T. With that laid down, I begin picking out the excellent cast details Matchbox gifted this model with. I've already given the headlights and front grille some attention, and now I'm filling out the coloured lamps of the side repeaters and rear clusters. I chose to simply paint over the cast registration plate and not pick it out. I'll be tempted to add in a more realistic decal over the top at some point, but I couldn't decide what to print. I'll let you decide in the comments, and I'll adopt any good idea that stands out. Here's something new that was suggested to me by a viewer in the comments section. This is Ammo Wet Effects, which I'm hoping will give a glorious glossy sheen to all of the lighting elements and reflective areas. As ever, I'm more than up for taking your advice and trying new things, so leave your suggestions down below. Right, let's rebuild this prancing moose. First, I place in the de-yellowed transparency, which fits snugly over that central roof-mounted post. After that comes the interior, which I felt no need to do anything with. Volvo leather interiors of this period are just a sea of black. Then the front bumper opening connects the front end, and a 3mm M2 laptop screw secures the back. This was how this Matchbox Volvo 760 looked before. I wanted to give this boxy wonder a proper mid-80s stock look. I had to fix the misaligned passenger side A-pillar first, but with some dishy wheels, period correct paint and some extra visual enhancements, I envisioned something truly bland to the casual observer. All the ingredients had been provided by Matchbox to take this model to the next level. So let's see how it now presents. So I've used Tamiya's Pearl Light Blue to recreate Volvo's Ljusblå Metallic. Then I've picked out all of the beautiful cast detailing and chrome and colour before topping it with Ammo's wet effects. The Creative 164 wheels are meant for Porsches, but I saw their similarity to Volvo's 80s hubs and they aren't a million miles off, I don't think. All of these additions have transformed the model, but do you think my effort is better than Matchbox's Ultra Collection version? Tell me which you prefer in the comments and let me know your suggestions for any improvements I could make. If you want to see more 1980s everyday models brought to life, be sure to leave the video a like. Also, please help support the channel by joining up to the YouTube membership page or pledging on Patreon. Your support is hugely appreciated. But all that leaves me to say is thanks for watching and I'll see you again for the next one. Bye for now.